Buddhism has always been, some philosophy. I'm not even sure to call it a religion. Philosophy, a way of life that has very much intrigued me. To detach from oneself, to find suffering as being the root of life. What are some aspects of Tibetan Buddhism that we, myself, the viewers watching, can incorporate into our day-to-day experience to bring more spirituality, to bring maybe happiness is not maybe not the word for well-being.
Yeah, and happiness too. Yeah, I think that one of the things is this really emphasis on compassion. That wisdom without compassion, it's not the full picture, right? That you need that heart education, as we were talking earlier. That you need the sense of, and compassion is it's not pity, by the way. It's cultivating a sense of understanding the suffering of others because you suffer too, and trying to, in a way, help both you and the other in this really overcoming suffering, but also helping them in increase loving kindness and to really have a sense of that we are all part of the same humanity, whether we are, Jewish or Sufi or Islamic or, Muslim or, or atheist. Yes, exactly. And so that the whole point is, how do we relate human to human? And so I think that part becomes very, very important in Tibetan Buddhism. So in a way, also finding ways to not just be in our mind, but also in our heart, but that means also in our bodies. And so that means that Buddhism, or, it's not about being in a monastery or in a cave, but it's living your life in a way that it's in accordance to how that supports you being more in your Buddha nature or in your wisdom nature, and how by that you can be more compassionate both to yourself and others. So these intertwining, or these really two aspects of wisdom and compassion are really one of the defining characteristics that it's in all the different practices of Tibetan Buddhism. So when you start a practice, you always start with this intention that you're doing this not just for your own release of suffering, but for the release of suffering of all beings. And at the end of the practice, you share the benefits. They call it dedication, like if this was a nectar that you pour in the ocean, so it's there for everyone, including yourself. So that's always present in all the practices that you do.
I think this concept of interconnectedness, which in a Western society we really view things as I am a student, my name is this. Individualization is very big in this Western upbringing that we've molded ourselves into. But I really think one huge thing to learn from these Eastern philosophies is the interconnectedness between humanity. I also wanted to the interview that we have with Dr. Aronson. I'll link it right here while the people are watching. He had a very I'm not going to say different take, but he had his philosophy, and you've spoken to him more than I have. He talked a lot about suffering, and maybe not putting ourselves to willful suffering, but the way into reaching arhat or to Buddha nature is ultimately through suffering. And for me, I was trying to formulate that in my head. Maybe you can give a clearer depiction.
Well, honestly, I don't think that we need to put ourselves through more suffering. We already suffer so much.
It's going to happen.
So suffering is like the Buddha said, it's like life is suffering. And this is not like, oh, this is so pessimistic. No, it's actually really noticing how much we're dissatisfied with life. And so how we can change that by noticing, each moment there's an opportunity to be more present, to be more compassionate, and yes, to be more happy. And so there is a sense of happiness as a skill. So part of what we do, yes, suffering is more noticing that exists, and then looking at the root of that. So the first noble truth is suffering exists.
Yeah.
The second noble truth is looking for the causes of suffering. The third is that there is an exit of that. So there is a way out, and that's called nirvana, but you could call it, it's just allowing you to be more present in your nature. And there is different path for that. Matthew Ricard wrote a fabulous book called, he wrote many, but called Happiness, Life's Most Important how did he call it? Life's most important skill. And one of the things I liked about it is that, happiness is a skill. So it's not whether you have it or not. So part of what we try to do in these traditions is to be more happy and the way is to be happy moment by moment. It's not like, okay, now I'm happy it's every moment you have an opportunity to be more happy or to suffer more. So what are you going to do? So every moment, every breath is an opportunity to do that. And in a way, we have a choice, even if it feels like we don't. The more we're able to separate, as I was saying earlier, the stressor and the stress, and noticing, we constantly blame the stressor for our stress. But the more we take responsibility and say, okay, let me find tools to notice, okay, I'm getting myself out of myself. How can I reconnect? Because usually the two disconnectors are anger and attachment, and the third one is ignorance. So if we're able to be more in our wisdom nature, we're not going to be so much drawn to attachment or to anger or to grasping and rejecting, but just being more connected without so much judgment and criticism, but just being present, and from there allowing your wisdom to be more like the sun, being present without grasping or rejecting, and sharing the warmth both with yourself and others.
I wholeheartedly agree. I know some people may be watching who may be saying, yeah, that all sounds good, but how do I'm in the car and I'm stressed because there's traffic going on. I think one of the easiest ways, and you can share your opinion, is meditation.